Have you ever wondered what it feels like to die on another planet? You might think it's just a random question, but what if I told you that the truth behind this could completely change the way you look at our universe? From planets where death is a quick and violent shock to those where it's painfully slow and drawn out, the experience of dying across the cosmos is anything but predictable. But here's the real kicker. Some planets have death so horrific that it defies anything we could imagine on Earth. And the worst part? You won't believe which one tops the list. You're about to uncover the answers to a question that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about life, the universe, and what happens when it all ends. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll not only know what dying on other planets feels like, but you'll be shocked at the extreme brutality of the worst one. Don't go anywhere. The truth is darker and more mind-bending than you could ever expect. What's waiting for you next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned. Now that we're diving deeper, let's take a step back and look at what makes dying on other planets so uniquely horrifying. Most people think of death as something confined to Earth, something we all experience in a relatively similar way. But as we venture beyond our world and into the vastness of space, the realities of death change completely. Imagine a world where the very air you breathe can kill you, or a place where time moves so slowly that your body experiences a death over what feels like an eternity. It's terrifying, right? But these are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the cruel and unimaginable ways death manifests on other planets. You see, space isn't just cold and dark, it's dangerous. Planets orbiting distant stars have environments so extreme, so far beyond human survival, that the way life ends is just as extreme. Let's take a look at a few examples of these worlds, starting with the planet that scientists have labeled as merciless. This place has an atmosphere made up of gases so toxic that a single breath will instantly incapacitate you, causing an excruciating death. Imagine being paralyzed by the very air you're trying to breathe. And that's just the beginning. The planet's surface is a never-ending desert, with temperatures fluctuating between a scorching heat capable of melting metal and bone-chilling cold that freezes you from the inside out. Those unlucky enough to survive the first breath of toxic air would eventually succumb to the brutal extremes of its environment. But Merciless is just one planet in a universe full of unimaginable horrors. Let's take a leap and travel to another planet, one that's entirely covered in water. The strange thing about this world, which has been dubbed sinking by those who have studied it, is that the oceans are so deep, the pressure so intense, that even if you managed to survive the descent, you would never see the light of day again. For anyone who found themselves trapped beneath the waves, death would come slowly, agonizingly, and without mercy. With the crushing pressure weighing down on your body, bones begin to crack, organs begin to rupture, and every breath you try to take is met with excruciating pain. For all intents and purposes, you drown, not from the water, but from the crushing weight of the ocean itself. But these are the predictable forms of death, the ones that, while terrifying, have a certain clarity to them. No, the most terrifying deaths lie on the planets where things are more unpredictable. Take the planet Eclipsed, where every day is a complete mystery. This planet's sun is constantly shifting in its orbit, causing days that are either unbearably long or entirely non-existent. Without the consistency of day and night, time becomes meaningless, and the human mind, unable to handle the disorientation, slowly begins to lose touch with reality. People who die on this planet don't necessarily die from a lack of resources or brutal environmental factors. They die from madness, the slow erosion of their minds as they are deprived of any grounding sense of time. A death in a world like this is not violent or quick. It is slow, creeping like a fog that blurs the lines between life and death. You begin to forget what it's like to live, and eventually, you forget what it's like to even be human. And then, there's the worst of all, a planet that has been whispered about in hushed tones by those brave or foolish enough to visit. This planet is known as the Abyss, but it's not the usual kind of abyss that you would expect. full of dark and foreboding landscapes. The real terror of the abyss comes from the fact that its inhabitants, those who dared to settle there, are still alive, or at least they were when they first arrived. The planet's gravity is so intense, its ecosystem so bizarre that the very structure of the human body begins to change over time. People start to grow unrecognizably altered, as if the planet itself is slowly eating away at them, turning them into something else. The horror of death on the abyss is not just a physical death. It is a transformation, a gradual dissolution of everything that once made you human, as if your very soul is being drained from you. Those who have been there and survived the initial stages speak of hearing voices, whispers in the back of their minds, urging them to stay just a little longer, to experience just a little more of the transformation. It's like the planet doesn't want you to die. It wants you to become something else, something unrecognizable. And the real terror, no one has ever escaped once they've crossed that line. So what exactly is it about these planets that makes them so unforgiving? Is it just their natural environments, or is there something more sinister at work here? Could there be an unseen force guiding the way death plays out on these worlds? And if so, why? What would drive a planet to evolve in such a way that death is the only true escape, and the process itself is the ultimate torture? These questions are what keep scientists awake at night, and it's these questions that will lead us deeper into the mystery. Because while we've only scratched the surface so far, the most disturbing truth is still hidden beneath layers of space and time. But here's where it gets even more interesting and terrifying. What if I told you that what happens on these planets isn't just a random accident of the universe? What if these planets were designed for a purpose? And, just maybe, that purpose was to experiment with life, death, and everything in between. What if, somewhere out there, a civilization had created these planets, tailored them specifically to test the limits of existence itself? Are we nothing more than guinea pigs in a cosmic experiment? Are these planets merely stepping stones to something even darker that's yet to be revealed? I know, it sounds insane. But stick with me, because the answers we're going to uncover might just change everything we know about life, death, and the universe as we understand it. The truth is far stranger and far more horrifying than anything we've discussed so far. So don't look away now, because what happens next? You won't believe it. While we've been uncovering these horrific and unimaginable deaths on distant planets, there's something far more sinister happening beneath the surface. We've explored worlds where the end comes from toxic air, crushing pressure, or the slow unraveling of the human mind. But each of these planets hides a far deeper truth, one that connects all of them in ways you won't believe. As we dig further into this cosmic mystery, what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. What if these deaths, these cruel and torturous ends, aren't just a result of harsh environments? What if they are engineered? And not by nature or accident, but by something far more intelligent, more malevolent. What if the planets themselves were not just born from the cosmos, but designed with a purpose, to experiment with life, death, and the very fabric of existence? And the deeper we go into this, the more it seems like the answers are being hidden from us on purpose. As we unravel this mystery, it's clear that there's something, or someone, pulling the strings behind all of these planetary horrors. Remember how I mentioned the abyss earlier? Well, there's something you need to understand about this planet. It's not like any other planet we've encountered. The people who have ventured there, those rare few who made it back alive, don't just tell stories of brutal environments or horrifying deaths. They tell stories of strange encounters, of something watching them, something alive in the very core of the planet. And when they speak about it, their voices are filled with dread, as if the memory alone is enough to drive a person mad. What if this planet, this terrifying world of transformation and madness, is not just an anomaly? What if it's a lab, a controlled environment designed by an intelligence far beyond our comprehension? The people who have gone there have found Something that didn't just change them physically, but spiritually. They came back different, more like vessels of something else, something ancient and unknowable. But what does this mean for us? And why are we only now starting to understand the true nature of these planets? Could it be that we've been blind to the fact that these worlds were never meant to be discovered, that they were created with the intention of studying death itself, and more disturbingly, the way life can be manipulated in the most horrific ways? There are whispers among some scientists, those who have worked deep within the dark corners of space exploration, that there's something happening out there that we cannot explain, no matter how advanced our technology becomes. These planets, these deaths, might not be random. They might be part of a far greater plan, a blueprint that spans across the stars, touching every corner of the universe. Now you might be thinking, how could we have missed this? How could we have ignored such obvious signs of manipulation? And it's a fair question, but here's the twist. What if we haven't been ignoring the signs? What if we've been intentionally kept in the dark? What if the greatest minds in space exploration, the ones who control the flow of information, the ones who decide what the public sees, have known all along? And what if this whole time, they've been watching as we venture deeper into space, waiting for the moment when we finally stumble upon the truth? The truth that these deaths, these horrifying ends, are not just isolated events, but part of a grand, carefully orchestrated experiment. The truth is, there are factions within the scientific community, secretive groups that have been tracking the movements of these planets for years. They've been gathering data, observing, and even sending people to these worlds under the guise of research and exploration. But what if these missions weren't about discovery? What if they were about observation? What if those who've gone to planets like the Abyss or Merciless haven't just been explorers, but test subjects in an experiment so vast, so chilling, that it makes the deaths of billions of innocent people seem like nothing more than a blip on the radar? The most terrifying part of all of this? We might already be part of that experiment, and we have no idea. You see, in every experiment, there are those who pull the strings from behind the scenes, manipulating variables and controlling outcomes. But what if the experiment isn't about the planets themselves? What if it's about us? What if we've been tested in ways we can't even comprehend, our very existence being used to shape the future of the universe? And what if the worst is yet to come? Could it be that these planets are merely the beginning? That the true horrors are still ahead, waiting for us on the next frontier of space? The more we uncover, the more we realize that the stakes are much higher than we ever imagined. It's not just about surviving on these planets. It's about understanding the forces that created them. The planets might be deadly, yes, but the real danger comes from the entities pulling the strings behind them. And what's worse, these entities are watching us. They're studying us, tracking our every move, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But there's something more unsettling lurking beneath the surface of this mystery. As we dig deeper, we begin to realize that the very nature of death on these planets is not just about physical decay. There's something much darker at play, something that affects the very essence of the human soul. The transformation on the Abyss, the madness on Eclipsed, the slow crushing weight of the oceans on Sinking. All of these experiences are part of something far more sinister. And if we're not careful, we might just find ourselves caught in a web of cosmic manipulation so vast that there's no escape. So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers, that's for sure. But the most chilling thought of all is this: the worst is yet to come. The planet we've been dreading, the one that tops the list of the worst places to die, might just be the key to understanding everything. The one planet that holds the answers, the one that holds the truth about what's really happening, is still out there. And we're getting closer to finding it. But are we ready for the truth? Can we handle what we're about to uncover? Because what we'll discover next will not only shake the foundation of everything we know, but it will reveal the dark heart of a universe that is far more twisted, far more dangerous than we ever thought possible. So don't look away, because what's coming next is unlike anything you've ever experienced. I can't emphasize enough how deeply this investigation has shaken the very core of what we know about the universe. We've traveled far from the initial glimpses of cosmic death on the planets like the Abyss, Merciless, and Eclipsed, each more unsettling than the last. But this journey has revealed something that no one, not even the most hardened space explorers, could have predicted. We've been delving deeper than any human has ever dared into these worlds, and the mysteries we've uncovered have begun to twist in ways that make even the most terrifying planets seem like mere puzzles in the grand scheme. The true horror, the real mystery, is not found in the planets themselves, but in the architects of these worlds, beings or forces that have been pulling the strings, weaving together a vast cosmic web of suffering, manipulation, and death. But the more we uncover, the more we see how close we are to the most shocking truth of all. It started with the clues, the small, seemingly insignificant fragments of data, a strange energy signature on the Abyss, a peculiar anomaly in the gravity fields of Merciless, the odd fluctuations in the atmosphere of Eclipsed. These weren't just random quirks of nature. They were patterns. Someone or something was controlling the very fabric of these planets. The energy signatures were not of natural origin, and the strange behaviors on the planets, which could have been explained by conventional means, had a deeper, more sinister purpose. As the pieces began to come together, the investigation took a sharp turn. It wasn't just about surviving on these planets anymore. It was about who was behind them and why. As we tracked the signals, we followed a trail that led us far, beyond the known reaches of space. What we uncovered was something beyond our wildest imaginations. These planets, these death traps, were not the work of a natural disaster or a freak cosmic event. They were meticulously crafted by an intelligence, an ancient and unknown force that had been watching us. These entities, who existed in the space between galaxies, had mastered the art of manipulating environments, twisting them into nightmarish versions of life and death. Their aim was far more insidious than we could have imagined. They weren't just studying death. They were engineering it. Each planet was a test subject, a carefully constructed ecosystem designed to push the limits of human endurance, to see how far the human spirit could bend before it broke. But this wasn't about scientific curiosity. This was a twisted experiment in control, in power. They had been waiting for humanity to reach the point where we could venture into deep space, and when we finally did, they ensured the path would be lined with horrors, not just to test us, but to see if we could survive long enough to understand what they had set in motion. We thought we were uncovering the truth about these planets, but what we discovered was something much more profound. These planets were alive, not in the traditional sense, but in a way that transcended our understanding of life. They were conscious, self-aware entities, created and cultivated by these cosmic architects. Every death, every suffering, was part of their design, part of their plan to test humanity's resilience. And the more we learned, the more we realized that the real purpose of these experiments was not just to break us physically, but to break us mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, to prove that the human will can be crushed by the right combination of fear, pain, and isolation. As the investigation continued, it became clear that there was something even more chilling at work. The architects of these planets were not just testing humanity. They were waiting for something, waiting for us to discover their existence. And when we did, we would be the ones to finish their grand experiment. We were the final piece of the puzzle, the catalyst for their ultimate design. These beings had been preparing for this moment for eons, and they knew that when we finally discovered the truth, we would be forced to make a choice that would decide the fate of not only humanity but the entire cosmos. The choice was simple. Would we become their new subjects, join them in their endless experiment, or would we rebel and break free from their grasp, risking everything to destroy their plans and ensure that these deaths, these twisted, orchestrated deaths, would never happen again. At the climax of our investigation, we came face to face with the entities themselves. They weren't just alien creatures or gods, as some might have expected. They were something beyond comprehension. Beings of pure consciousness, existing outside the constraints of time and space. They communicated with us not through words, but through visions, feelings, and sensations, showing us the vastness of their plans. And in that moment, everything changed. We understood the true scope of what was at stake. These beings didn't just want to study us. They wanted to control us, to harness the very essence of our being and use it to fuel their existence. They needed us, and they needed us to be broken. But we had a choice. We could accept our place in their grand design, or we could fight back. The final twist came when we realized that the ultimate weapon, the one thing that could break their control over us, had been with us all along. It wasn't technology, weapons, or advanced knowledge. It was our will, our determination to survive. The thing that had kept us going through all these trials, all these horrors, was the one thing they couldn't control. Our spirit. The key to breaking free was realizing that we weren't just test subjects. We were the experimenters, the ones who could rewrite the rules of this cosmic game. We were the ones who could shift the balance of power and take control of our own destiny. In the final confrontation, we used our own strength, our resolve, to tear through the illusions they had placed around us. It wasn't an easy victory. The cosmic architects fought back with everything they had, manipulating the very fabric of reality to try and crush our spirits. But we stood firm, our minds focused on the one thing they couldn't take from us, our determination to survive. And in the end, we succeeded. We shattered their control, broke their hold over the planets, and freed the souls they had trapped in their twisted experiment. It wasn't just a victory for humanity. It was a victory for every living being in the universe who had ever suffered under their watch. As the dust settled and the last remnants of their power faded, we were left with a profound realization. The universe is vast, mysterious, and full of unimaginable dangers. But the most powerful force in the cosmos is the strength of the human spirit. No matter how dark the path may seem, no matter how insurmountable the odds, we have the power to shape our own fate. And with that, we ended our journey, knowing that the truth had been uncovered and the greatest threat had been vanquished. But there are still questions. There are still mysteries left unsolved. And though the cosmic architects have been defeated, their legacy remains, a reminder of the darkness that lies in the corners of the universe. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.